And now it is my very great pleasure to welcome to the stage the director of Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops, Jenifer McShane. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jen.
Welcome to New York, your hometown.
This is my hometown, so I'm very, very, very happy to be here. We've been all over the country. We've had great receptions, but there's something really special about coming back to the city you grew up in. So thank you. I'm really happy you're here.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would like to say to the audience to put them in the mindset before we go into this adventure?
Yeah, that's it. It's an adventure. Well, first of all, I want to thank Doc NYC and HBO Films for all the tremendous support. I'm really, really, really grateful. I'm grateful you're all here. This film was a really meaningful project. I hope you have the same experience watching it as I did making it. And it's an issue, we just need more oxygen or light on this topic. And my hope is that people will see it either on HBO or in festivals, and be inspired to look at their own community and think, how can I make it a little better? How can we work together? Because I feel like the film is about human connection as much as it is about policing and mental health. And I'm thrilled you're here, and I have my amazing team in the house, Andrea Medic, Toby Shimon, yes. Jen Stamps,
stand up.
Joy Reid.
Stand up, Toby, stand up,
Could
Andrea.
not have done it without them.
You guys are amazing.
They were incredible. So thank you, and thank you all for coming, and I hope it moves you the way it moved me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenifer. So Jenifer will be back after the film for a Q&A. We also have two very, very special guests in the house. I might be giving something away by that, who will also be joining us for a Q&A, so keep your butts in your seats afterwards because we're going to have a great conversation. I would now like to invite all of you to turn off your cell phones. This is a very powerful and important conversation about mental health in our country, and we would hate for that to be disrupted by your phones. If you need to use your phone during the screening, please exit the theater. When you pull your phone out, everyone can see your screen, so let's be respectful of one another, and let's keep our phones in our pockets. You're more than welcome to leave and come back in. That's not a problem. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy Ernie and Joe, Crisis Cops. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage the incomparable Jenifer McShane. And in addition to Jenifer, we have Joe Smarro and Ernie Stevens in the house. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Can I get you guys just to step forward with me a little bit so we're in the light? Everyone wants to see your beautiful faces. All right. So just to kick things off for everyone, Jenifer, can you tell us how you found out about Joe and Ernie and your experience when you first went down to San Antonio, Texas?
Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm so happy to see all these faces. But I also... as a filmmaker, you hope you're going to tell an important story, find an important story, but when you can do that and then be blessed with unbelievable subjects, I mean, I really felt like I hit the lottery. The kind of interest in this topic came from my last film, which was about women in prison. I followed 5 mothers who were incarcerated at Bedford Hills, and that film was, can you hear me? Yeah. The film was about mothering and parenting, but while I was researching and filming there, it was abundantly clear to me that so many people there were struggling with some serious mental health challenges, or were there in part due to trauma and other issues. And that kind of connection between mental health and who is sitting behind bars was so clear. And that film I wasn't able to address that topic in that film. So when I read a wonderful article about the work happening in San Antonio, kind of generally, in terms of how the city was dealing with jail diversion and mental health, and that article featured the mental health unit, And I knew the reporter, so I asked her. I just said this was fabulous, and she said, "Do you think you want to meet them?" And I said, "I'd love to." And I went out and just drove around with them for several days without a camera, just to make sure that this is really what I thought it was, because it really spoke to me so strongly. And it was like within maybe 5 hours, I was like, why the hell don't I have a camera? So it was clear, and I just felt a compulsion to tell it. It's so everybody's dealing with this. Every town, every city. We've had people from rural Minnesota stand up and say this is the #1 issue in their area. Obviously, New York City, everybody's dealing with this. So telling the story through the eyes of the de facto first responder, they have become the first responders to this crisis, just seemed like an innovative way to tell the story. So I got very lucky with them.
Thank you. So Ernie, Joe, we have talked about, your response to Jenifer when she first showed up without her camera and how you were bemused by that. But I'd love to hear from both of you about the challenges of being subjects of a documentary while also attempting to engage with very fragile citizens. How did you find that balance? We're going to have to share.
Oh, sorry about that. Yes, I did question her being a filmmaker because she had no camera. But yeah. But I mean, we needed that actually to take place in order for us to gain her trust, rapport. She made it very comfortable for us. As far as engaging with individuals during a crisis, she's a professional. I mean, she crammed a sound guy, 6 foot something, and a cameraman in the back of our patrol car, and it looks like some of these shots are up close, but really they're still back in the vehicle. So it's a testament of her ability to respect somebody's privacy, right? But also capture that moment on film. So it was challenging. Being a subject was, in fact, I'm going to take 2 seconds to say thank you to my family that's here. And Daddy was gone a lot this year at film festivals, baby.
Yes.
And so I'm sorry, but you're in New York City, so we made up for it.
That's true.
So it was challenging, but rewarding and fulfilling, to say the least.
Yeah, and just quickly to jump on that too, she really blended in every day. So because we're not acting, it's not like we're gonna do a second take so she really did a great job of just capturing the essence of what we were doing in real time. And then again, of almost 3 years and 300 plus hours of footage, to condense it down to 94 minutes really is just what her and her team has done is nothing short of masterful. And so it was truly, as cliche as it may sound, it really was as if she wasn't there, because we were still able to do our work without her really kind of intruding on what it was that we were doing. So it really was easy working with her.
Thank you.
Special shout out to Toby, who
Yes. Toby Shimmy, the editor of the film, is here. And also a special shout out to Andrea Medich, who is the executive producer on the film, who is also in the house. Thank you so much. So just to piggyback on to what you guys have just been talking about being approached and being a part of the film, obviously I think you had your thoughts about the film while you were going through it, but what has been the most surprising response that you have received from audiences as you've been going through the film festival circuit over the last 10 months?
Yeah, for me, it's been the universal, parallel from no matter where we've been, people have responded essentially the same way. The amount of emotion that is coming out from people, having grown men come up to us after a screening, crying and just processing through something that maybe they've been dealing with for decades. Having people be willing to kind of take their mask off and come up and say, hey, this film touched me in a way that you'll never understand. And I've never told anybody outside of my wife and my mother that I have a mental illness, but watching you up on screen now, I'm coming up and telling you, a complete stranger. So just things like that, seeing the human spirit really come together, which I think is so important right now, really more than anything. And again, it doesn't matter where we've been, it's been the same response. And so I think that's one of the beauties of the power of this film.
Yeah, we're actually we're really encouraging. I'm blessed that HBO, thank you to HBO. I think they're all in the house. I hope the team has been amazing. But we're also trying to encourage people to watch this with friends and family. It's going to air on Tuesday on HBO because I think it's a great catalyst for discussion. That's my hope anyway.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, that's okay. I'll share with you and you share. Ernie, did you want to say anything about the question that I had just asked about what the surprising response has been for you from an audience?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Joe nailed it. Just people coming in and opening themselves up. And, I had a girl, I'm going to say the B word. I had a girl from Boston. Sorry, boo, I know, right? I had a girl from Boston come up to us. Oh, come on, Jen, I'm trying.
Sorry. I know I'm putting him in danger.
But I had a girl from when we were in Boston say, I rode 4 miles on a bicycle with a flat tire because I did not want to miss this film. And, that it speaks volumes at the length and just the energy that people will go to either see the film or the response you get post-screening, where they come up and really just open themselves up and say, thank you. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for making this topic, approachable again.
And thank you. I mean, I think we all echo that sentiment very much. Jenifer, I want to piggyback on something that Ernie mentioned earlier about cramming a 6-foot sound man into the car. So I want to talk about your filmmaking process because I think it's so critical to the integrity of this film in terms of the distance that you kept between yourself and subjects, and also about consent. We've talked about that a little bit before. Can you share with everyone about how you got consent from the subjects on screen?
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to say SAPD was terrific about access. The access was amazing. Really surprising. I mean, granted, my first film was in Northern Ireland, and my second one was a maximum security prison. So I was, not expecting a lot, and they were amazing. The access was great. But in terms of the subjects they were helping, the whole film is about human connection and dignity and how we're treating each other. And so for me to kind of be an elephant in the room while they were trying to build rapport just seemed crazy, absurd. It's ruining the whole thing I'm trying to illustrate. So it was extremely important to me to stay a very safe distance, a respectful distance, because I didn't want to ruin that moment and because I want to respect what this person's going through. So that was kind of paramount. And the crew was wonderful. EJ and Paul were phenomenal about that because it was frustrating at times to be crammed and be so far away. And the sound came in as very important. Paul, too, he did an amazing job because of the distance, the sound was so critical. We wanted the viewer to feel like you were kind of on the shoulder there. And so that was very helpful. And in terms of releases, if there was any question, I mean, I'm not interested in having a release from someone who's not able to understand what they're signing at the moment. So if there was any doubt, I blurred. And then Kendra, by just an amazing situation, the city of San Antonio would only release the dash cam to her, not to me, which I actually applaud. I don't think anybody should have your worst night in their pocket. And so Kendra had to get the permission, and I went with her and talked to her, and much to my amazement, it was actually very moving. She was quite powerfully in favor of me using the footage. I think, which I thought was very brave. And she said, not enough people understand how someone like me gets here. And then she agreed to participate in the film. And at that point, I felt she was fully aware of what she was agreeing to. And it was a real amazing piece of, wonderfulness from her to trust us to do that. So it varied case by case.
Thank you so much. So last question for Joe and Ernie, and maybe Jenifer, you'll want to comment before we throw to the audience for you to all ask your questions. For the two of you, this is your day in and day out work. I also know you have a consulting business, Joe, outside of this, and this is very much in your blood. What is the two things or the one thing that you want people to walk away with in terms of how to engage with mental illness in their community after seeing this film?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Jesse. And for me, that was the reason I did that TED Talk too, right? Is really when we're talking about I see you, what you're also communicating is I'm willing to be seen. And so I think what the best thing any of us can do first is own our truest self. because it's very difficult to either advocate, educate, or try and get someone to shape their mind or behavior if we're not willing to do it ourselves. And so for me, it was very important that I did become vulnerable, and it took me a while to learn how to do that. But as people watch this in their communities, whether it's rural or large cities, I think one hope is that they would see law enforcement officers as people, but also that they would realize that the problem is not unique to any specific area, and it's not unique to any specific person or any type of person. It really is universal, and mental health is one of those things that really does transcend all boundaries. It does not discriminate. Anybody can be inflicted by this. And so how then do we respond to that? I think in order, we first have to embrace the fact that we are the ones that created the stigma. We're the ones that create stereotypes. They're not just born organically out of nothing. And so we then have to be willing to be the ones that are going to undo it and say, hey, you know, the way we used to think about this, maybe that wasn't okay. The way we used to judge this problem, maybe that's not okay. And so I think we need to individually be responsible for that, but then collectively we have to be willing to do it as well.
Thank you so much. Ernie, anything you'd like to add?
No, just 2 points in the film is one, did it catch you by surprise that police officers killed themselves as a rate of 3? This year it's actually 4 to 1 that die in the line of duty. And I know, especially here in New York, that's been just a major topic. So, you know, I would like the conversation to resonate within police departments about, you know, receiving help. You know, letting you know it's okay to ask for help. But we have to break that stigma like Joe talked about. Also, the clip in the film about, you see me speaking to a group of teachers and nurses. I think it's very important that we approach the subject at a very early age with these children and let them know, you know, what is mental health? What does it look like? What is mental illness? That way they're not, you know, you hear so much about bullying and this and that, but I think if it's introduced at an early stage in a child's life and they learn about it and they normalize, you know, the vocabulary and the terms about it, and hopefully it's not, you know, sprouts into stigma as they become young adults.
Thank you so much. Jenifer, did you want to add anything on that point?
They're so articulate. I think they covered
Okay.
it. But I do hope it is. I would love the film to be an inspirational tool for communities to really grapple and look honestly at how they can make it better, how they can work together. Because the secret sauce of San Antonio is that they collaborate. Yeah. This is not really about training officers. That's really, really important. But if you don't have mental health facilities for them to go to, if you're not talking to the mental health community, one of the things I was most impressed with in San Antonio was they have monthly meetings. All the hospitals, private, public, all the mental health facilities, and law enforcement, and the sheriff's office, they all sit and physically sit around a table. Not an email thread. They physically sit around the table and talk about what's working, what's not working, how do we make it better. And until we're willing to do that in our communities, we're going to continue to struggle, I'm afraid.
Real-time change. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome your questions right there.
Hi there. I have many technical questions for you. Thank you so much for the film, but I want to know, what do you do if the person you're dealing with does not want to come with you, does not want to go to a mental health facility or counseling?
So the question is, what do Ernie and Joe do when they encounter someone that does not want to cooperate, to go with you to engage?
You never saw that. It happens, Jen, every now and then. Really what we do is we just be patient. You know, why rush? You know, when you rush a situation, then you could force your hand into doing something. That's where your use of force comes from, right? That's where you capture these videos of police officers using force that you see. You know, we've been partners for 7 years. We've been on the unit, you know, for 10, and we don't have one use of force, not one. So I think it's taking a step back, understand that what you see is not actually what's happening. What you're seeing is the behavior. What we need to figure out is what's causing the behavior, right? What is the root cause of the issue today? And let's discuss that. Because that's probably the first time anybody's ever even asked that person, you know, why are you feeling like this? Instead of saying, stop doing this, stop acting like that. You know, if you have allergies, can I tell you, hey, stop sneezing? You can't, right? It's just a symptom of your illness. So we take our time. We let them know, look, this is going to be what's best for you. Like you saw the gentleman, you know, sitting outside of Sugar's. He didn't want to go, but through talking to him, building a rapport, which Joe did with him excellent, he was able to come with us, no handcuffs, and walked right into the treatment facility.
What would you do if they
And I'll pass it because I think we have the same answer since we've been asked that.
Yeah, so if now there's law that will dictate when we have to take somebody, right? In Texas anyway. So if you're threatening suicide, if you're threatening homicide, or if you're mentally decompensated, which means you're mentally ill and you don't know what day it is, your activities of daily living are compromised. So if we have one of those three criteria, then we have to take you to the hospital. So no matter how polite you say, hey, thank you, I appreciate your concern, but no thank you, here's what I do. I tell them, like, what's your name?
No.
What's your name, ma'am?
Let's just, okay, we'll call you Tina, thank you. So whatever their name is, right? I use their first name. They know my first name. We've been talking for a while. And I'm just very matter of fact with them. And I say, hey, look, I want you to be a part of this process. You have zero control over the fact that we're going to leave your house. We're going to go to a hospital. That's going to happen, I promise you. But what you have control over is how we leave here and then where we go. Because I don't want to take you somewhere you don't want to be. If you've had a bad experience at a hospital, I don't want to take you there. But you also get to choose how we're going to leave here. If you want to fight me, and I'll tell them, if you want to fight me and I can call people here and we can fight, we can do that. But I don't think you want that. I certainly don't want that. So let's just walk out of here. And then through mirroring behaviors, it comes down to also understanding people, understanding human behavior, understanding how to get people to do what it is you want them to do. There's a big difference between, hey, don't do that, and, hey, will you come with me and do this? If I invite you to join me in something versus telling you to do something, you're more willing to do it. But it's understanding just those simple things when it comes to human influence, behaviors, why people do what they do. And that comes through experience. It comes through really just saturating yourself in these people first professions like law enforcement and taking the time to understand why people do what they do.
Thank you so much, Joe. We're going to move on to another question. Thank you, right here.
Thank you so much for the film. It's really wonderful. You guys are such obviously great role models for police officers. And my question is kind of about recruitment and where do you think you can get great police officers, and what would you tell somebody that was going into the academy, wanting to become a police officer?
Great. So the question is, where do you think you can recruit great police officers, and what would you tell someone that's entering the academy?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's something that is so overlooked because right now, if you were to YouTube any police recruiting video, what do you see? It's a whole bunch of things that don't actually happen, right? A lot of recruiting videos are geared towards the high-speed part of law enforcement because that's what people are attracted to, right? That's why we watch Live PD and Cops and all this stuff because it's like we're addicted to that adrenaline hit. That's not the reality of law enforcement. That could happen possibly maybe in a Tuesday in 4 years, but today and for every day, it's most likely that's not going to happen. So I really think that we're doing a disservice by how we're attracting people using these videos, which is almost false advertising. You put me in charge of recruiting videos, you're going to have officers out there shaking hands and going in and sitting down being like, hey, Pam, how's y'all, man? Jimmy's at it again, huh? That's terrible. Because that's a lot of what we do, right? It's a lot of what we do, and I think we have to be authentic in how we're trying to portray what our profession is, because if we're, law enforcement is kind of one of those terms that really confuses people in itself, right? Maybe that is something that could be shifted even from law enforcement officer to just peace officer. And even, words matter. And so I think just simple things like that. But as far as where we can recruit them, again, I think anywhere. Here's another. You ready for this one? I'm glad you're sitting down. Put me in charge. What if we said you couldn't be a police officer until you were 30?
Yeah.
Think about it, right? The brain, especially in men, isn't even fully developed till 27. But yet at 21 years old, we're fully arming them saying, hey, you can go out there and protect and serve and have the right to remove people's civil liberties up to killing them to protect yourself or others. Imagine if we had a world where you had to be 30 years old to join this profession, where you naturally had some life experience, maybe some education, and the ability to slow down. What would it look like then?
De-escalation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Joe. Did you want to say something to me? Okay. We have time for one more question, and you were the lucky lady.
I'm an art therapist, so
I know it's not that good, but just come on.
I'm laughing about it, but that's not my question. So one of the things that I do is I help curious how much that term is familiar to you guys and how much is incorporated into the trainings that you do.
Thank you. Great. So the woman right here is an art therapist, and the question is, does art therapy come up in your training at all, and if so, how much?
Yeah, no, art therapy does not. Vicarious trauma does. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I got you, Jesse. No, we do talk about secondary trauma. We talk about moral injury. We cover a lot of, again, why is the problem? If suicide is 3 or 4 to 1, why is it the problem, right? We can't just say, oh, suddenly this is it. This has been an issue for so long that we have just continued to ignore. Even in CIT, you know, we've been training officers in CIT since 1988, starting in Memphis. And it does a great job of preparing the officer for the community, but we just neglect ourselves, right? There's so much self-neglect in law enforcement or first responders because, again, it's like this is a patriarchal profession, right? It's like you don't talk about your feelings, you don't struggle, you know, just shut up and let's keep moving on. And it's unfair. And so the amount of cumulative stress that we deal with, the amount of trauma that we're responding to and dealing with throughout a 20 or 30-year career is unlike anything in any other profession when it comes to having these issues. The question then is, what then do we do with that? So I think training is a great part to at least talk about it. Resiliency training is huge. Adopting wellness programs and self-care so officers can learn about the benefits of art therapy or music therapy or equine therapy or water therapy or whatever type of therapy. I'm a huge advocate for therapy, whatever form it takes, as long as it's not in the form of a pill or an alcohol or a relationship or another human being unhealthy, because those are the ones we tend to adopt because we can hopefully do them in private without other people knowing, and we just know where that problem ends up. And so absolutely, yeah, we're addressing that now in San Antonio. Some other agencies are doing a great job with that because it's such an important piece of us coming out of this problem that we have is understanding self-care.
Thank you again so much. Ernie, anything you wanted to add?
No, just that, you know, there have been studies done that, you know, you hire a police officer today, you know, they pass the MMPI, the test, the psychological test. You give that same officer that same test 5 years later, good chance they're not going to pass it because they have been, you know, thrown into so much trauma. You know, as soon as you graduate, you go into an FTO program and immediately they have to volunteer for the worst calls that the city has to offer to get you experience. So imagine that, you know, you're 21 years old, you know, you just quit your job at Starbucks to become a police officer, and now you're going out handling double homicides and suicides and sexual assaults. And what does that do to an officer over a 20 or 30-year career? So, you know, yes, we advocate for you should at least check in with your psych services at least once a year, if not twice. You know, the self-care, the resiliency. Joe's, you know, become the wellness officer on the department. So self-care, I think, is huge.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry that we're rushing through this, but just to close us off, Jenifer, could you just tell everyone in the room, if they care about this film, what they can do and how they can spread the word?
Thank you. First of all, you can vote. Sorry, shameless plug. And also remember to tell everyone you know that it's going to be on HBO on Tuesday, November 19th. And like I said, encourage to watch in groups, I think would be really a beautiful thing. If you go to Ernie and Joe, the film, or if you go to HBO's page for Ernie and Joe, there's resource pages, there's a discussion guide. We are working hard to plan outreach for the future. So anything you can do to either check in, follow us on social media, tell people about the film. A lot of this is word of mouth. It's very hard to get people's attention these days, as we all know, which is why I'm particularly thrilled you're all here today. So yeah, those are the big things. And I really appreciate being here. Thank you all.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, all three of you, for your bravery in doing this film. All of you shared so much of yourselves personally, and it's such a testament to the work that all three of you do in very different ways. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask Joe and Ernie and Jen to exit the theater quickly with me because we have run over. But you are more than welcome to join us outside and continue to have very important conversations. We so appreciate you being here. Please put your hands together for Jenifer McShane, for Ernie Stevens, and for Joe Smarro. Thank you for coming to Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops.